What's going on YouTube? Welcome to another Wednesday oil painting demonstration. Today we are going to paint a portrait of a friend of mine, DeWeet. He is a member of the Billiard Academy that I go to in Alexandria, Virginia, and he was gracious enough to let me take a picture of him for a painting. So we are working with oil paints on Wednesday. And hold on a second here. So Wednesday is oil paint, Thursday is acrylic, Friday is pastel. So I'm starting off with raw umber. I'm working on a 9x12 cotton canvas panel, getting an idea of where the head is going to be placed, how big the head will be in relation to the canvas. So I don't know, about that size is good for me. The canvas was toned with neutral gray acrylic paint ahead of time. Hey Mark L, welcome. So I think that I'm gonna let probably his head be kind of right almost at the top of the canvas. I did do a study prior to starting this, which tends to be the case these days. I'm doing more studies before starting these. Now we're going to go ahead and quickly mass in some shapes for the shadows. And we'll start to mix up some colors, which is what you're here for, to see how I mix up the colors and how we make some naturalistic looking skin tones. Hey Christine, welcome. Another exciting start to an oil painting. Major difference between oil painting and acrylic is this, being able to draw with the paint. With acrylic, of course you can draw with the paint, but you won't be able to, say, get a dry brush and subtract like that, right? Like we can do with oil paint. Doesn't necessarily make this material better than the other. It's just slightly different. These differences will determine which material you want to use. Some of you, for certain health reasons, cannot use oil paint and you use acrylic, and you want to know the differences between them, and that's one of the reasons I'm here. Okay, so I've got the head roughly mapped out. I mean, the glasses of course are gonna fit somewhere over here, but this is the basic shape of where the head is going to fit. The ear somewhat over here, but the major composition in terms of top, bottom, left, right, vignette, all that stuff is figured out. Now we can go ahead and start to mix up some colors. So let's go ahead and do that. Yellow ochre, just kind of mixing as I feel. I'm using spiked lavender as my medium today and thinner. So spiked lavender is my thinner. That's what I used to thin out the paint just now. And well, it is an oil, so we're going to use it as a medium, but you could also just use it to thin out your paint. It's a pretty good medium to use. So this will be our first little guesstimation as to what we're going to use for the light. The mixtures are pretty simple. Yellow ochre, a little bit of red, so yellow ochre, red, green, that is terre verte, what could also be the same as sap green, alizarin. So as you see, we're going across green and red. If it looks too red like this, obviously you can use the green to neutralize it a little bit. See that? Get a nice and thick mixture of color here for what we'll use for the skin tone. Put the brush down. Hey mate. And we're going to use a different brush for the darks. alizarin permanent, basically green and red once again. And we're gonna just use this to quickly block in the dark shapes. First, we're gonna look at this shape of color. And that is a bit too red. Now it looks too dark perhaps on your screen, depending on settings on your screen. So that's a tad bit lighter, still looks dark to one of my screens. I'm looking at this on actually 3 different screens. So that's gonna be our shape. It's gonna look like sunglasses at first, but these are the shadow shapes. Nose is gonna fit somewhere roughly about there. Drawing with simple shapes is going to make this much easier. The light is overhead, meaning our brightest light is going to exist somewhere over there. So there's going to be a lot of stuff going on in the shadows. So that's why we want to go into the shadows as quickly as we can. See this? I can mix directly onto the shadows. No problem there. Took in a little bit of cerulean blue to mix directly onto that shadow shape. A little bit more of the alizarin. Fit into this dark shape right away. Okay, so very nice and abstract. Here are the skin tones that we mixed up. Go ahead and cover everything right away. What you want to do is cover the surface with shapes that you can work with. Shapes that are easy and simple for you to maneuver around. If you're working from a live model, this is especially important for you to be able to do. I will admit with pastel, this is a lot more difficult. I did a study of this in pastel that I didn't record, and it took me forever just to get that color in pastel, because you have to keep mixing and mixing and mixing on the surface, especially if you don't have as many colors. I have only 5, so it took me forever. And with oil paint I can get it right away. With acrylic it'd be the same thing, you'd be able to get that color right away. Now we're going in with the planes. You're gonna have light and dark. So again, I'm painting my friend DeWitt from the Billiard Academy that I attend in Alexandria, Virginia. Basic shapes there. Now again, depending on the light situation, right? The light is mostly overhead where he was posing, and I chose a angle that's close to profile, but still you can see it's 3/4. Depending on the light, you can choose different angles, and again, I like the profile of his head, the nose, the strong eye socket shapes. You see that shape right there, very very strong shape right there. So I chose this angle on purpose because I knew that it would show more of his character than just getting the front of his face. Cerulean blue, white, yellow ochre, cadmium red, a little bit of green is what we have here. I'm using bristle brushes. Now because I cropped the background, as you can see in the reference, not that I zoomed in too much on the reference because this is not supposed to be a copy of the reference, otherwise this would be titled copy and paste from a photograph. You see the photograph already does the job for us, which is not what we're trying to do, but anyway, the background works as it is, so I may not even do anything for the background here, and it'll be strictly about form. This painting will be a lot about form. Have a lot to do with form, structure, values, color mixing, anything you could think of. Now I'm going to switch brushes here, and we're going to have a middle value brush, and we're going to start to build some planes here. We're going to push the light, so a tad bit more red, as you see there. And we're going to chop right into it, treating this very much like a pastel. We'll leave that alone for now, but we'll chop right into it just like a pastel. This is where the ear will eventually fit, somewhere down here. Starting out a painting like this is a lot of fun because we are throwing shapes around and it's easier to move. But if you don't have a lot of drawing experience, this can be quite difficult, which is why with my students I don't recommend starting this way. What I'm doing here is showing you what's possible. And that's the difference between, you know, a YouTube painting versus taking an online class and learning step by step, or going to an atelier and learning something step by step. Shadow side on the back. I'm going to add more of a shadow here for where the mouth and the chin are going to fit. Big broad brush strokes. So we're going to do a lot of developing of the shadows. Blue mixing directly onto here. No extra medium yet. I'm using, again, I used a tad bit of spike lavender to thin out the paint. Let's go with straight red. Tad bit of spike lavender to thin out the paint. Hey, Augustin. And that's about all I needed for this thus far. Cadmium green. And anytime you want to build your skill set in painting, I recommend you do studies before doing a final painting. Like this would be, I'd consider a final painting. And I did a study and I realized that jumping right into the eyes and into the mouth, which looks more realistic, actually made the process a little bit, it delayed the process because I was trying to delineate things in the shadows that I didn't have to, because it's eventually you just build them up as they are. So an important thing about today is going to be let the subtleties, you know, let the finesse build on its own. Let it just happen. Let the finish just happen. And work with the surrounding shapes, even though it may not look human for quite a while. And this is about almost about 20 minutes in, and still just working big planes. This lighting is difficult. I would from easy, middle, difficult, advanced, I would consider this to be not advanced but difficult. So not an easy light setup. Last time we had an easy light setup. Light was on the forehead mostly. There was some hair covering the background. The shadow was quite predictable. And we did an acrylic where there was a neon light going on, and the background was a small landscape and things like that, and that was way more difficult than this. So the difficulty level ranges between basically how the light is set up. We're going to go into the lead white, which is mostly dry, but whatever is available is going to be useful here. And we're building up the side plane of his forehead. And this is the part of the painting where a lot of stuff is happening all at once. It's exciting. There's lots of changes going on. The forehead is going to get a tad bit more yellow, but maybe not that yellow. So we're going to mix a bunch of colors on here to obtain these skin colors. Is no different than someone with, say, a lighter skin complexion. As you see, same exact palette from last week. Tad bit more yellow. I've learned a lot from pastel that I've been able to apply onto oil painting. Now, mixing on the canvas is nothing new. That's something I've already known for, well, I guess I can say decades now. It's been more than a decade. But, well, it hasn't been 2 decades yet, but more than a decade. So, over a decade now, I've already known this. Now, his forehead is a little bit tall. So, this is an excellent opportunity. His ear is too high. So this is an excellent opportunity to move this shape up. This is why I say keep your shapes simple and easy, such that when the time comes to make changes, those changes are simple and easy to manage. Really simple to move that shape up. And as you're doing any corrections, it can also help, and it still needs to go even taller than that. As you do corrections, you can also add, instead of subtracting, you can add stuff to the composition as well. Or just to the form. In this case, it's going to be mostly the form. Root of the nose is going to be somewhat over here. That's going to change that angle a little bit. Go to darker values. Appreciate all the likes. Everyone that's left a like. With the darks, I'm going to use a tad bit of Neo Magilp, which is a gel-like medium, similar to Liquin, except it doesn't smell quite as strong as Liquin. Okay. I'm also now going to suggest the glasses, where the glasses are going to fit. By no means will it be the final shape for the glasses. That would be crazy to even try to do in a painting that's only 23 minutes in development. Glasses are only suggested. We're only suggesting where the glasses are going to go, but it's important to suggest them right away. If you're painting someone that wears glasses most of the time, the glasses themselves are going to be an important, integral part to the likeness. This cerulean blue, we're going to use a tad bit of phthalo That's white. And there we've got some light. The upper eyelid is going to be above the highlight for the glasses, so making sure there's going to be some space for that. Just light and dark for the glasses. Try not to spend too much time on it because you will add them in and then take them out from time to time. Nice and simple. Okay, so now we can start to add more subtlety into the light. Of course, it's way too early to get into the super specifics. So there's going to be some light under here. Like I said, you're going to go right through the glasses. So don't invest too much in the glasses. You're going to add them in and take them out periodically. Working in this style, I really suggest that you don't put too much for the glasses, but put something. Spend about 3 minutes on them at the most. In the end, all we're probably going to have is this, and that, and maybe some of the light, but not much. Okay, so back to the light. There should be a brighter plane there. For the lights, I'm mainly just using titanium. I used a little bit of lead white for the light on the forehead, but that's about it with the lead white. And we're going to go to the shadow tone and use a tad bit of phthalo. Here's where it's going to get tricky. And by tricky, I mean it's going to get really tricky because we're going to have some reflections in the shadow, which you typically want to avoid if you can when you're taking a photo reference. In this case, I only had about, I don't know, 5 minutes or less, 5 minutes at the most to take this picture. So there's some reflection here that is, I can't avoid it. It's part of the composition. So I'll show you what to do with that. A bit more phthalo, and this is phthalo turquoise. Not too much though. A little bit goes a long way. Some reflection under here. I'm very glad to be painting people that I know as opposed to relying on images from the internet. Of course, tomorrow, if you looked at the schedule, tomorrow is going to be a sergeant in acrylic, which is kind of a taboo to do that, but I'm going to do it anyway. But the same concepts are universal here. Using big shapes of color, values. Now, if you're painting from a live model, this is incredibly important. This is one of the most important things that you will learn is how to simplify what you're looking at and just react. What I'm doing is just reacting to the shapes. Added a tad bit of green there because, well, the brush decided to go there. It's instinctive. Now as we start to subdivide the shapes a little bit more, we're going to start to hone in on more specific planes. If I can salvage part of the glasses, I will, but I won't hesitate to paint right over them. Some of the hairs from the brush falling off. Now, of course, that might be too red. So go right into the palette. That worked pretty well. Side plane of the nostril, bottom of the side plane of the nostril, the wing of the nose. Tad bit of blue there. So we're going in with cerulean blue. At a certain point, all this will become automatic for you, especially if you do a lot of life painting, like I did when I was younger. If you don't have access to painting groups, just like I don't, where I live now, then painting from the old masters is going to be your saving grace. And if you don't know how to do that, well, I'll show you tomorrow. Don't worry about the likeness. The likeness will take care of itself if we focus on the shapes. Keep the shapes simple and easy. Anytime we need to correct something, we will do it with the shapes. And nothing else is necessary. Of course, the other planes that like the glabella and stuff like that, I will ignore for now and develop them later. The upper eyelid. Our guesstimation for the upper eyelid is going to be about there. Lower eyelid. Switching to the shadow brush. Now I have a light and a dark, and I guess at this point a really dark brush. So multiple brushes here, as opposed to with acrylic, I typically just use one. Because with acrylic, the paint dries right away, so there's really no need. little bit of yellow ochre behind the ear, or I guess however you look at it, to the left of the ear. Now we're going to put some light on the neck. As for the vignette that I'm going to choose, there's going to be the light of the collar. Tad bit more light. And for the collar, I'm going to go in with some of the thin dark paint. So this is about good enough. Throw in some hints of red in that turning value. So that's about good enough. Now I'm going to go in with a dark brush. Put in some dark accents. So one is going to fit here. This is going to be important for the vignette. Stuff that you leave finished to complement the more finished things. My major influence is Nelson Shanks. So, I mean, you might recognize with how I've toned the canvas if you've looked at Nelson Shanks after I mentioned him in the past streams. Now we're going to go in with a gray. We have these darks, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to move the camera scene up a little bit. You can see the bottom right here. Ultramarine blue, but perhaps we're gonna have to add more paint. That ultramarine is kind of dry. But before that, we'll add some accents. Well, we have this value for the mouth and the nostril. These are little accents. Accent for the nostril. Over there, simple shape, easy to work with. Eye will eventually fit somewhere there. Tear duct over here. The other eye somewhere about there. Simple accents there before we use this brush to make something else. Hey, Kristen. Oh, thanks. I'm glad you like how I demonstrated mixing the skin tones. I mean, I may put something in the background as it would probably help, but again, Nelson Shanks is my major influence, and he's done a lot of demos where he didn't put anything in the background. But as I mentioned, that the background would be helpful in further refining the skin tones. But of course it's a neutral gray, as that's how I cropped it. We're going in with a bluish value here, and I'm going to add a little bit of Neo McGilt. The idea is to paint over it with more opaque light. So again, the model is DeWeet. His name is DeWeet. He's one of the He's one of the members at the Billiard Academy that I go to in Alexandria, Virginia. Last Friday, we painted the pastel portrait of the owner of the academy. Hey Sam, IHA, welcome, welcome. Okay, now that I've got this blocked in, let's go ahead and block in some light. Gonna throw in little hints of yellow ochre onto it first, kind of just like a pastel. I mean, exactly like a pastel. And then we're going to add the white, letting some brush strokes represent different shapes on the shirt. And this shadow now needs a tad bit more specificity. Going with green and red quite a lot. Cerulean blue. It's important to have the freedom to be able to mix directly onto the surface. Oil paint is more forgiving in the sense that it remains workable throughout the entire duration of the painting. Acrylic is not as versatile, but it has other advantages that oil paint doesn't. Okay, now we're adding the light. And this is the tube of titanium white from Gamblin. It's one of those newer ones. I mean, new relative to me, which is not that new, but it's they changed the logo on it, and looks like this. This is what these Gamblins look like now. I'm not sure how I feel about it. The titanium white is, for starters, drying a lot. It's super slow drying compared to perhaps what their titanium once was before. But it handles a little different now that I just added a bunch of it. straight onto one plane. It's not, the tinting strength isn't quite there, as you would expect. See, look at that. That's supposed to be titanium white. It's acting almost like zinc white. So that's something to take note of there. Not the end of the world. You just have to adjust to it, see? And that's it. Just have to add a little bit more. It's a nice soft light. It's not a bad thing. It's just different than what I was used to before. So it's not that bad, actually. Just gotta adapt. I had to adapt to 2 new mediums for these live streams, so adapting is all I have been doing. Okay, so now we can go and add more subtlety, such as going to the eyes now. Cleaning off the brushes. I'm using spike lavender only. Anyone that has any health concerns with air quality, spike lavender is the way to go. It's more expensive, but it is in general better for the air quality of your studio than Gamsol. I'm only using it because I just felt like experimenting with it. Pushing that dark a tad bit further. And we're going to use some of our Rembrandt knowledge. And add some red over here. And we're going to get the dark brush loaded up with a little bit of blue. Push these planes a tad bit darker, closer to the gray. More of the planes of the face right there. Now with Nelson Shanks, who I've already mentioned before, needs no introduction, but to get that kind of look is not easy. You're going to have to use different color changes. Like here, it's getting a little bit more blue. We're going to add a tad bit more green. But let me tell you something important for you to know. And those of you that want to push your art further are going to listen to this as carefully as possible. And I think perhaps it's a guesstimation, but perhaps 95% of realist painters or self-proclaimed classical realist painters that even go to ateliers other than, like where Nelson taught and the other, like color inspired painters, 95 or whatever, 90-something% of them are going to paint the same type of colors for the same, basically everything. With flesh tones, they're going to paint flowers, different colors of pink. They might even use different tubes of pink. But they're not going to paint color relationships. And, well, painting from a photo reference like this is pretty much not going to help you that much either as you're beginning. You need to do this from life, but I understand something that I didn't understand many years ago is that not all of us have access to painting live models. So when you're painting from the photograph like this, well, what you need to do is do so many different, and I added a tad bit of cerulean blue there to change. That's alizarin, that's some green, that's cerulean blue, so that goes blue, this goes yellow, this goes red, green, everything is a different type of hue. It's not just this is a lighter version of that, or this is a darker version of that. These are different colors. But what you want to do is paint through experimentation of this is a lighter plane. Well, instead of just putting white onto this, let me experiment by putting, I don't know, blue, green, purple. And well, what does this color look in the light relative to that color? What does it look relative to the other? When you're painting from, say, a still life. When you're painting from a photo reference, you gotta make them up. That's why I said I'm just guessing. Basically, I just changed it a little bit. It's just a guess. It's unfortunate, but that's how it is when we can only paint from photo references. Hopefully, if all goes well, this coming weekend, I will go paint in Maryland again. I'm gonna make the 2-hour drive to go paint with one of my friends from a long time ago, back when I lived in Maryland, Karen Warshaw. Do a little bit of painting from life. But we'll see. I don't know really how my schedule is gonna go. I live life one painting at a time. Not quite a quarter mile at a time, but one painting at a time. There's a fly that's been trying to test me. Oh, believe me, I'll be hunting it on the break, which will be in about 10 minutes, which is about accurate. Usually the first 10 minutes, or sorry, the first hour, there's 10 minutes left till the break, but usually the first hour we block everything in, and the second hour we start to work on the subtleties. Thank you, Sal. You wrote a spike lavender, a medium or an oil paint color you're using as a medium. Spike lavender it's an oil that can be used as a medium on its own. So basically it's just a substitute for Gamsol. This is what it is. Spike lavender oil. It's basically just to thin out your paints. I would not suggest to use it to clean your brushes. Like, it's too expensive for that. So when I'm done with today, I'll just use my Gamsol, or classically you would use something like a turpentine to clean your brushes, which I don't suggest you do. I don't even own turpentine anymore, but classically that's what people would do, and to clean their brushes. Well, living in an apartment space, Gamsol is the most I'm going to use to clean the brushes, and then I'll just use the soap that manufacturers make to clean the brushes. Thank you for the question. There's absolutely no need to use it though. There's no need to buy spike lavender. If you are okay with using Gamsol, which I am totally fine with it. I use it most of the time. I use spike lavender to mix with linseed oil to create a medium sometimes. After all, it is an oil, but you use it as a thinner. But it's not, so you wrote oil paint color. It's not an oil paint color though. So it's not a color. It's just it's an oil basically. It's just something you use to thin out the paint. It's like using safflower oil. You could use that if you want, but it'll slow down the drying time. Hey dude, not sure what that means. Hopefully that's a good thing. Sounds like a good thing, I don't know. Now we get to start the subtleties, which is basically what I'm starting now, kind of ahead of time. This is the fun part, where we start to subdivide the shapes. All of the major proportions are now in place. The eyes, the axes of the eyes relative to the top of the head, bottom of the head, the shape of the head, the position of the ear relative to the eyes, which gives us perspective because we see somewhat of the bottom of the nose, so we know we're looking slightly up at the model. But all of those big shapes, big planes are now in position. Everything is ready for the subtleties. I didn't have time to edit another video for the break, so you're gonna have the video of Hugo again. Hopefully you don't mind. I know many of you've probably seen it several times already, and I'm gonna create another one. But it does take a while for him to learn new tricks now, so perhaps the videos will be more like kind of like little movies, little short movies. A bit of green. And perhaps this bluish reflection on the glasses might be, it wouldn't be that far-fetched to say that it's probably from the felt of the pool tables. I took this picture in the academy. This blue will exist back here as well. Go back towards the yellow. About 3 minutes till the break. Not too many comments this time, so you're either really invested in what I'm doing, or you might be really bored with what I'm doing. Let me know. We'll get to chat more during the second half and the third. Well, after the first break. And definitely a lot more after the second break. never mind. Pretend I didn't say anything. As soon as I say that, there's an exodus. So, never mind. We're just gonna paint. And don't worry about anything else. Hey, Mark. Oh, I understand. Trust me, I'm tired too. I'm tired too. Thanks, Hansel Dog. Oh, thanks, Augustin. I appreciate it. Before we go on break, let's add this light on the corner of the nose. Like I said, the influence is Nelson Shanks, and in particular the studies that he did, where he left the background just the gray of the canvas. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look up Nelson Shanks portrait studies and you'll see a lot of just a blank of the canvas. What's important is the contrast between values. Contrast between values creates a really nice illusionism, which is what we're after with this type of classical painting. Alright, after I put some light here on the lip, the corner of the mouth, we'll take a break. Which again is not too far-fetched to speculate that this light is coming from the reflection from the pool tables. The felt is blue. Okay, I'd say we're ready for the subtleties, which means it's a good time now to take a break. So hopefully you'll not get too bored of the video of Hugo. Of course, he is my Shiba Inu that I have raised basically his whole life since he was 11 months old. He will be 2 in about, I don't know, he'll be 2 in December. So anyway, I will be back. Hopefully you'll enjoy the little short video that I played during the break. So when we return, we'll work on the subtleties of the face. Okay, I have returned here. Let's see here. Hey, May, I'm glad you. Let's see. I'm glad you like how recognizable everything is. Hey, Shavu. Let's see. We got a username that's not so appropriate. Nose isn't quite. Nothing is finalized yet, so it's just part of portrait painting that you'll learn eventually. Hey Giselle, you tried some water soluble oil pastels. Dry. Let's see, they've been lying around. Very smooth. Oh yeah, the writing paper is definitely important. So now we get to continue to work on the subtleties. Of course, nothing is going to be quite right or perfect yet till we start to add more information on the subtleties. So let's go ahead and do that. Now this had a touch of red, so let's add the red. Hey, Julia, you wrote size and shape of the brushes. These are all size 2 filberts. Silverbrush Grand Prix. So once again, the influence is Nelson Shanks. And yeah, we got people complaining about the reference, so go ahead, complain now. Gonna need a bigger screen. So the whole point is not to replicate, of course. Okay, looking at the shapes. We'll add some of the light for the glasses though, like I said. We're gonna add things and subtract them. We already painted out some of the glasses. The shapes for the glasses. Yeah, these are just size 2 filbert bristles. Nothing really like special about them. They're I guess just filberts. They're nice in the sense that they have the kind of like the specificity of a round, because it's kind of round on the top, but it also has that kind of plain carving ability that you get from a flat. That's what makes filberts nice to use. Light for the glasses. Okay, so now we're gonna go into the maxilla, which is right here, basically the side plane of the nose. Painting a portrait of someone, especially someone that you know, is very difficult. It's one of the most difficult things that you'll ever do in life, as opposed to other things. But painting a portrait of someone that you know takes things to a whole other level of difficulty, and I don't suggest anyone do that for a while. So especially now that the holidays are coming up. I say this every year as the holidays approach. I've been on YouTube for a while now. So as the holidays approach, you're going to get a lot of friends and family that learn that you know how to paint. You do oil paintings or drawings and pastels and stuff. And, well, the question is going to emerge. Can you paint a picture of Uncle Henry? Or something like that. Of course, every year I throw in a different name, but be very careful with that, because that just is a recipe for disaster. Now again, with brushes, as you asked me to discuss about the brushes, it's really not that much special about these brushes. They're filbert bristles. They hold a lot of paint, but they still apply a nice and soft touch. The cleaning is a little more involved than cleaning a acrylic brush. You have to clean it with your odorless mineral spirits, and then you gotta use the special artist soap. So it's a tad bit more involved. You can't just throw it in the freezer. If you do, you have to cut off the oxygen. You gotta put it in a bag. Seal it basically from the end of the brush to the front of the brush. But these brushes are great for the purposes of working with planes, having a specific touch with the brushes. It's also, I would consider, a disadvantage in oil painting versus acrylic, is that it's very brush specific. And acrylic can be very brush specific too, depending on what you're trying to do. But oil paint is even more brush specific. But there's more of a feel to the brush than there is with acrylic. So somewhat similar to pastel, you can really feel the fluidity, the thickness of the paint, things like that. Adding a little bit more red reflection, the bottom plane of the nose. Not there in the photograph, but somewhat. I can somewhat see a little bit of a warmer reflection. So I'm pushing it more than I see in the reference. Now we'll go in with the blue. So make sure to use a hue change as well as a value change for shapes like that. A little bit more of the blue. I'd say we've gotten pretty far in the first hour with this one. Like I said, I do studies beforehand, so I already had kind of a general concept of the lighting and what things would work, what things wouldn't work. It's always important to have at least one practice sketch, even if it's only 10 minutes. Hey Giselle, the background is really working. That's interesting. I didn't put one in. That's just the tone of the background. Like I said, I'm trying to follow the Nelson Shanks type of aesthetic, where he leaves that gray of the background, especially like these streaks of just the brush stroke. And in order to paint like a Nelson Shanks, you really have to You really have to fine tune your subtleties, and that's what we're doing right now. It's basically like the boss level subtleties. And working from a picture just makes it that much more difficult. Now, using phthalo turquoise in the skin tones can be very risky, so use with caution. Use some of the blue here. So again, the blue is phthalo turquoise. Use with caution, letting it mix with the skin tones here. Hey, Pure Hermit, thank you for that comment. So phthalo turquoise mixed with the skin tones that were already there creates a pretty cool effect, literally cool effect. But you don't want to overdo the blue, so use with caution. Shape for the glasses. Nice and simplified shape there. Chin is going to have a tad bit more light. Back to the phthalo turquoise, but not too much. light under here. This is a very tricky area. Using some values right from the palette. Gotta be cautious with this. And yes, of course, there's some reflected light. You can see what he's wearing would reflect the light. But you have to be very cautious with it. And we're gonna darken this area next. Pushing the color a little bit. Using a red here to push the blue. I'm adding these darks very sparingly. Now on a difficulty range, this is probably higher than I initially thought in the beginning. So I'd say this is probably closer to, say, advanced, as opposed to just difficult. A little bit more than difficult, because you have to work with these shadows, and they're not. It's not an intuitive process. You really have to use a little bit of knowledge of your forms. That's why I pushed that red. It's not in the photograph at all, but I pushed it red because I knew that it would, in theory, push these shapes forward a little more. Gotta make sure that all your highlights don't look the same. So now as we approach the lights, we're gonna have to, and we already changed to, this was more blue, more yellow, I guess more pink, more green, but we're gonna have to be careful not to just make everything look the same. Again, not easy to do. For example, this one should get a tad bit more pink. Purplish, I guess. Because it has blue and it has red. Hey, Libertas. Welcome, welcome. There's a shadow from his glasses that are cast down here. And I'll put them in, but not quite yet. And I won't put them in as obvious as in the picture. Gonna push this a tad bit more red. Kind of like a grayish light red. Thanks, Libertas. So the more realistic things get, like now that's starting to get more realistic, the more you're going to have to balance between what you see and what you know. And especially when you're painting from a reference, a lot of times it's going to be more about what you know than what you see. Which is why those master studies are really important. Hey, so I would. So if you and anyone else is trying to paint from the painting that I'm doing, I would recommend using the picture of the painting. So whenever this is finished, use the picture of the painting as opposed to the reference. So what was it? Friday, I used a different reference, so not an image online. So I would suggest using the final painting as opposed to the reference itself. I'm telling you this because I'm editing a lot of stuff here in this painting, and just like if I were to paint a Rembrandt, I wouldn't want to time travel and paint his model, although that'd be pretty cool with the time travel, but I wouldn't want to time travel and paint the model. I would rather paint from what he saw. So I would suggest, if you do want to paint from or use the same reference, instead of using the reference itself, use the painting as opposed to the thumbnail. I know, it sounds strict, but it would only benefit you. I don't want to give you the wrong information. The wrong information would be to tell you to paint from a picture. I'm giving you a painting to paint from so you can avoid the picture. Pictures themselves will mess you up if you don't have guidance. So be wary of anyone that, and myself, my previous posts, be wary of any posts that have the same reference picture. That's just asking for disaster. You want to work from the painting. As weird as it sounds, trust me, I'm not a good business person, which is good for you. I'm a terrible business person, but I'm here to give you the best things that can help you. I'm not trying to sell you anything. But what I can do, I don't want to be that strict. I don't want to lose you or anybody. What I can do is on Patreon just post the picture itself. Maybe just do it free, not charge you anything. Just post it on the Patreon. Oh, thanks, Giselle. I'm glad you ended up using the painting. So you figured out what I was going to say before I even said it. That's great. Yeah, learning painting online is a very new concept. A tricky one, especially with representational realism. That is, painting something to look like something that you saw as opposed to something a camera captured. A lot of times there are crossovers, like, of course, cameras can capture light and shadow, but especially when it comes to color and perspective, the camera doesn't quite get it. The AIs, I'm sure, can fix it, but that's a whole different story. I'd say the best thing to do is to do self-portraits, as many as you can, and then kind of like balance that with working from paintings from the old masters. And then when you do paint a picture on the internet, make sure that the light and shadow is strong, or at the very least, make sure that, like something like this, use a resource like this, where someone does the painting for you from the reference. So it already edits out things that aren't edited out in the reference because it is a reference. It's so difficult for me not to put something in the background. I really want to, but I'm trying to maintain the Nelson Shanks aesthetic, which I know is kind of silly, but I don't know, it's a challenge I put up for myself. Pushing the color a little bit more towards the yellow. Now over here, more towards the orangey red. Now one thing about Nelson Shanks, from what I've noticed, is that yes, he did push his color a lot, but in the end of the day, I think he did prioritize form over everything. So as much as I can push these colors around, ultimately form will take more importance. Getting out of this planar kind of look is going to take just the same thing we've been doing, a subdivision of the planes. Nothing different. We just have to be patient with this process. The model DeWeet, very good guy, by the way. He's the captain of my Tuesday night 9-ball league. And I think he's like an APA 5, for those of you that know what that means. So, pretty strong player. Pretty cool guy. Pretty much evenly matched in 8-ball. White is a coolant, so I'm going to use it to cool the top up here and lighten the value. Gisele wrote, will you be doing or able to do a live self-portrait? I've done one before. I'd have to experiment with my light setup right now, because the room is mostly dark. There's light here and everything else is in the dark, so I'd have to experiment with it, but that's a good idea. I don't want to frighten too many people with my face, so I might scare a couple people. That's an idea. When I was in school in Philly, these kind of paintings were my favorite, with the background and the brush strokes and things like that. So I'm very, I don't know, I'm having second thoughts whether or not to do more. But there's a certain look to this type of painting that near and dear to my soul. It's almost like cooking a dish that's no one else likes but me, but I cook it for myself anyway. It's like a nostalgia from when I was in art school. As you know, this is not normally what I do. I don't normally leave the background like that. But the nostalgia is a thing. Or was that orangey color? Again, I'm careful not to overdo. It could easily be overdone. You gotta be cautious with that. Now, of course, this light would go pretty much perfect up here. More of the lead tin yellow. Right there. Of course, I'm not going to let it dry like that. There we go, something like that. Now the shadow for the glasses, I'm gonna underdo it a little bit. But first, there should be some light underneath. Now remember the John Singer Sargent saying, every time I paint a portrait, I lose a friend. So don't be too sensitive whenever you show, if you do a painting of someone you know, don't be too sensitive when you show it to the person. Now, of course, the Wheat is a fantastic guy, and so is Dion, the guy that I painted on Friday. So that's all cool, but not everyone is like that. And Dion, he really liked the painting, and we did a trade for it. So I got to keep a certain a piece of equipment that I was really happy to keep. And so I'm gracious that he did like it. But I have done several paintings of people in the past that didn't like what I did of them, and you just gotta accept it. Everybody has their own tastes. I've done paintings of people and they gave it back. So just be mindful of that. Don't get too offended. People have their own taste, their own personalities. I'm not saying I'm just gonna give paintings away. I don't. I do some kind of trade for them or something, but just know that Sargent quote is a thing. Every time I paint a portrait, I lose a friend. Is the quote I'm talking about. So don't take it too personal. Just because you spent a lot of time on it, you enjoy what you did, doesn't mean that others will. Same thing when you post on social media. Lately I'm a nobody, I'm a ghost. So anytime I post something, I don't really get the following I used to. But that's okay. You can't take things like that to heart. Nor can you get too big-headed of a post that goes viral and assume that everything else is going to go viral. Okay, 7 minutes till the final break. Thanks, Hansel Dog. I'm glad that this helps you while you're drawing. It's actually one of the things I was hoping for the most, that my videos would do something like that. So thank you. a lot of phthalo turquoise in pretty much everything. Still very cautious about that color. Okay, so the glasses, we're gonna have to do one last little edit before we go on break. So paint them out, but keep the plane change evident from here to there. So painting the glasses out, the frame of the glasses. Then we're gonna go back, umber black, alizarin green, type of Neo McGilp. Just like quickly. It's almost straight. Paint that shape in. Same brush, tad bit more green. Shadow is gonna be just kind of a drift. Just kind of faint like that. Of course there'll be some shadow under here. Again, very subtle. We already put the shadow there. It's not much of anything. And then we will use a fan brush to kind of soften it. In my case, make sure there's not much glare. Nelson used this fan brush a lot. Of course, he used a different brush for the same purpose, but he used the fan brush a lot. Okay. That's why you see me putting a lot of brush strokes in this direction, so it doesn't glare too much. Okay, so let's see here. So comment from Julia wrote, tone background is a compliment to the portrait. Oh, I'm glad you like the brushwork, confident handling of color. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you like the explanation of the color with respect to the shapes. Hey, hippie artist. Welcome, welcome. Hey, Giselle. Yeah, you can always recycle the canvas. But I mean, I would hope to not have to. I mean, that's usually the goal, to create a painting that will survive for many, many years. But yes, you can always recycle the canvas. I've got a bunch of those, actually. This is a panel from who knows when. See a smaller one. And yeah, you can reuse them, though I hope not to have to. It's always the goal. Okay. So, an hour has now gone by. Another hour, so we're at the 2-hour mark. So this is going to be the point where we take our final break. I don't think there's that much left to have to do another hour after, but we'll, we'll take our time, see what extra shapes we can paint in there. So I'm going to take a break. I will play the video of Hugo once again. Hopefully you're not too terribly bored of it. And I will, of course, edit another one at some point in the future. Before we go, let's see, Giselle, your dad used to say, don't look, what? Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. They may one day rule, what? Hold on, I'm trying to read. They one day refuse a painting by a famous painter. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. They may one day rue the day they refuse a painting by a famous painter. Oh, that's what you mean. Okay, yeah. Yeah, trust me, I know all about that. Not that I'm a famous painter, but you know, you never know, really. You never know. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a break. I will return in a little bit. Hopefully you like the video that I play. I promise I'll edit another one at some point in the future. Okay, time for the last installment on this painting. So I appreciate those of you that have remained. I will make a comment on the spike lavender that I have been using. It does make the room smell pretty good. I do have access to a window, so I can open the window and let the fumes go out if they're too strong. But I did say that they're non-toxic, so it is not that bad. But just know that it's kind of a thing if you're not used to it. It's kind of an alarming smell. But anyway, let's go ahead and finish this up. Now we'll get into the like I would call them the impossible subtleties, but still kind of just the subtleties. We're gonna work on this eye a tad bit more like a bluish tint underneath of the concavity of the eye socket. But yeah, like I said, I really don't think this will need the entire hour. So probably just another half hour or so. I like paintings like this where, you know, the glasses filter out a lot of information in the eyes, so we can add more stuff for the glasses now. Which actually can make this look more naturalistic. Hansel Dog, will I give delete the painting? Probably not. I usually don't give paintings away. But Delete knew that when I asked him to pose for me. I'd paint him on the internet. I've got one other friend, pool academy friend, and then I think like a couple others that want to pose for pictures for these paintings, which is great for me. What I may do is just end up letting the painting hang in the academy, as Dion, the owner, is pretty nice about hanging up paintings in the academy, kind of like a gallery space. Again, everyone, don't just give your paintings away, as tempting as it is. Of course, I really like Delete, but I know what Delete wants more out of me than a painting is for me to improve my pool game. And he's always happy every time I can, you know, like clear a table or run a table while we're playing. And, you know, he's able to do that himself too. So that's what we want out of our time practicing, is learn how to run the table. Which means just play a really good pool. That's all it means. But please don't get into the habit of painting people and giving them the paintings like for free. Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. I used to trade pet portraits for pool lessons for my my first instructor that I had several years ago. You know, trades are totally fine to do. No, I don't think Dewey's watching. uh, I could text him and tell him, hey, you're on YouTube at the moment. And no, I'm sure he's busy. Has stuff to do. Hansel Dog? Nah, I haven't entered any painting contests lately. I still have yet to finish a studio painting I started, I don't know, like 2 months ago, and I thought I'd finish it in like 2 weeks. So a little bit behind on that. I want to. I really do. But if you know of any contests, let me know. I mean, gallery contests. That'd be pretty cool. I don't know. Who knows? I'm open to whatever. I just don't really know time-wise what I can create that's that I would feel comfortable entering in a competition just yet. Has anyone here entered any competitions? You can also write this as a comment. If you're watching this after the video was filmed or streamed. I used to enter Portrait Society of America a long time ago. But I got tired of the constant rejection, which is not a good thing. You should always be pushing forward. That's one thing I learned from pool, is to be okay with not winning, not even placing, despite the hundreds of hours of work. That's why it's important to play a sport when you're young, or in general. It doesn't matter what age you are. Play a sport. Above all else, it teaches you, like how to be resilient in competition, how to not give up. A Hansel Dog, enter drawings and contests at a state fair. Old school barter system still works. Yeah. Of course. Definitely. I'll tell you, there's nothing better than people actually, like appreciating or being excited for what you do as an artist, as a painter. Whenever you find it as something you want to hold on to as rare. Pretty fortunate that at the academy, pretty much almost everybody is excited to see paintings of mine. But it's not always the case, really. I mean, back when I was painting with art groups, it wasn't. I mean, it was just another painting, another day. When you're among painters, it's a different story. When you're amongst friends, they tend to be more supportive. And when you're on the internet, everybody wants to sell your kidney. So it's a different ball game when you're, say, posting on social media or trying to make a living on the internet. Competition's fierce. Whenever I post on Instagram, I more or less feel like a lonely ghost. I have maybe like at the most 50 likes now, where I used to get over 100. Which is why it's important to have a balance in life. I keep telling you this, telling everybody this. Have something to balance your painting. If you are painting at least the number of hours I am here on YouTube, you need a balance, or else it's going to eat you up. Watch out for the flat, dark shadows. I mentioned this to a lot of my students that get to this point and then just leave the shadows kind of like a dark abyss, the endless abyss. You want to correct the photograph. So here we're adding a touch of red. And it's not really showing up on camera. Hansel dog. Yeah, I did paint earlier today. Whoops, sorry about that. I did a study of this exact portrait, but I did it in pastel. Although I taped it to my wall, so kind of stuck there. But I can take it off the wall if you want to see what I did. I didn't even have the glasses or anything, but it was enough for me to know what I was going to do. Yeah, I'm going to raise the light, not the light sensitivity, but the light itself. It's not good for my eyes, but I don't think there's that much time left in the demo. There you go. So you can see, maybe with a tad bit more clarity, what the color looks like. This will also be a time lapse when it's done. for Instagram and YouTube Shorts. Same color, but maybe more alizarin for the other side. Hey, Hansel Dog, why is it that you do the study before the actual painting? Why is it you don't just do one or the other, but not both? So I do a study before the painting, just like I would on a practice, I guess. Like if I was playing a concert or something, like if I was a musician, I would assume that a musician would practice their songs before they go in concert. So to me, this is kind of like a concert. That's why I do that. I also do that to sharpen my skills. Try to get better. And here's the thing, and it's very difficult to quantify, but higher skill level painting doesn't necessarily mean more detail. It means more subtlety in terms of, I guess, the poetry between the values and the shapes relative to one another, as opposed to the level of detail. Form is still important. I mean, I'm still adding as much form as I can fit in there, but the subtlety is not just in the little tiny shapes, but it's in the big picture. But yeah, to me, this is like music in a concert, and I need to practice a song before I do the concert. I'm sure there's some musicians that don't even have to practice, but I wouldn't be one of them. More of the blue for the side of the nose. But yeah, we're almost there, everyone. Not that much left. I'm going to stand back to reassess everything. Yeah, of course. That does give me two portraits of the same person. Absolutely. But like I said, it's practice for this video. It's nothing more than practice. So it's a skill building exercise. Okay, so I'm standing back. I'm looking at the shapes. And I don't see much else that I would want to change. So one thing I like to do is look at the painting through a mirror, or I'll flip it over. But I won't flip it over actually, because I forgot. This is going to be on a time lapse. So that's the last thing I want to do. Yeah, just a little bit of refinement on the glasses. And I think that'll be it. Some more with the glasses. So yeah, it's important to build your skills and not think about the end result, even if it's the same portrait of, it's the same person, same portrait 10 times, you're building your skills. It's not so much about the individuality of each painting. You see that a lot in like John Singer Sargent studies, which is what we're going to do tomorrow. And of course I'll do a practice of that before I do the actual painting, but it's good to do those practice paintings. Yeah, like a warm-up, exactly. Yes, yeah, definitely notice more nuances. Absolutely. So home stretch. We are almost there. This painting went a lot faster because the background was left to the tone of the canvas. Pretty much a la Nelson Shanks. And I really appreciate all you that joined live today. Tomorrow will be an acrylic John Singer Sargent. And is that even possible? Well, I don't know. We will see. That is, can we use acrylic to make a Sargent study actually look like a Sargent? I don't know. You'll have to tune in to find out. Remember your perspective. This should be smaller than this. See that? So this is bigger than that by quite a bit. Perspective is very important. And it's not something that shows up that easily on camera. So remember your perspective. Okay, really don't see much else. Hey, mate. It's like you celebrated your mind. That's funny. Okay, let's bring out a Silverbrush for the signature. But before that, let's put one last Sargent or Sorolla kind of brush stroke, because we kind of have to. Nelson would have done something like that. Yep, something like that. Perfect. Perfect for the final brush stroke. Oh, thanks, May. Thank you, May. I'm glad you're looking forward to tomorrow. I'm looking forward to that as well. Definitely a challenge. Is it even possible to use acrylics to emulate a Sargent? We will find out. So I'm using kind of like a brown with a lot of medium for my signature. But before I add the signature, I'll ask if there are any last minute questions. Oh, perfect. I did say about only 2 hours and a half, so we're at exactly 2 hours and a half. So much easier to sign on a dry surface. Thanks, Hansel Dog. Like I said, I wrote, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Background works. Oh, I'm glad you like the background. Both May and Giselle read each other's minds. That's pretty cool. Remember, anyone that may be new, the schedule is Wednesday oil painting, Thursday acrylic, and Friday pastel, 4:00 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And that's about all I got for you today. Hopefully you enjoyed today's live stream. I wish you all the very best in all of your artwork. And I'll see you on the next one.